up there.
I have something at 11.
Just now, the president said that he would do something about hate, but since he's taken office, DHS defunded the Countering Violent Extremism program and disbanded the Domestic Terrorism Intelligence group. What does he mean when he says he's going to do something about it? When so far there have been many actions taken by Homeland Security that have been the opposite of doing something about it.
Yeah, well, Homeland Security is doing many jobs in trying to keep our great country and each of us safe and secure. I know Acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan was on a network saying that they don't have the resources to fight white supremacy, but and they need more. But this president is calling out all forms of hate. He did that about an hour or so ago. You were all there or covered it, certainly. He's calling out white supremacy, as he did 2 days ago. Antifa, anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, evil, hatred. He's speaking to a nation about all of this and trying to unify and heal, taking concrete steps. And his political opponents are talking about him. So that's a big split screen, and I think America sees that split screen, as the President and the First Lady have done many, many, many times since they've been here for 2.5 years, and will continue to do for the next 5.5 years. They are on the road today meeting with victims, grieving families, first responders, medical professionals. They did it on the ground in Las Vegas. They went to Parkland, Florida. They've been there at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. They've been there for victims of natural disasters as well. They are there about unity and healing. It would be nice to find a couple of other people who can get off the TV, show up there from the other side of the aisle, and ask the president how they can help with background checks or red flag laws, and certainly how we can help unify and heal.
Well, the acting secretary says that
countries have issued travel advisories about the United States because of mass shootings, warning their citizens about the dangers of travel to the United States. Do you think that's an overreaction?
Oh, that's up to them. I don't get into the business of other countries in that regard. I think it's an overreaction insofar as we are a very safe nation that has been wrapped with back-to-back tragedies the last couple of days that have shaken all of us, and I'm sure have shaken those who are abroad thinking of coming here. But this is a safe and welcoming country, and I'm very glad that many people do, millions every year, choose to come to the United States to enjoy what we have to offer.
Kellyanne, on Monday, on healthcare, is the president planning a major speech next month to lay out another new healthcare?
He is. We were supposed to be in Florida yesterday, giving one of his healthcare addresses specifically about Medicare, but that got pulled down for obvious reasons. So the president and first lady can go to El Paso and Dayton today instead. But yes, we're working every single day here. I've already been in meetings this morning on the president's healthcare plan. It's pretty impressive, and even before he rolls that out, I will tell you, as I've said before, that pre-existing conditions are covered, dead stop, 100% non-negotiable. So anybody who says otherwise is lying. I'm sure you'll be fact-checking them. That'll be new. And we also just want to make sure that Medicare is strengthened and improved and protected. Medicaid, we want to make sure that the 28 million or so Americans who have no health insurance 10 years after they were lied to by President Obama, that they can keep their plan, keep their doctor, and everybody would be covered, that they can get some coverage.
Will it include the executive order that he's promised on international drug pricing, the index?
So he's working on that as well. I mean, the drug pricing is a piece of this, and drugs, frankly, are a piece of this, but this is much more elaborate than that. We're not here to repeal and replace Obamacare. We've noticed with some bit of delight and irony that the Democrats seem way past Obamacare at this point. They're all just marching towards socialized medicine, government-run health care, wrapped up as something called Medicare for All, which basically means less Medicare for seniors. So if they're not talking about Obamacare, why should we be? We are also, I'm sure that you're all aware and following it with bated breath, the Texas versus Azar decision should probably come out of the Fifth Circuit later this month or next month, and we're all waiting to see what that'll say as well.
On Monday, the president said mass murderers who commit hate crimes should get the death penalty. He's also reinstated the federal death penalty. We've heard him advocate for the death penalty. The Catholic Church Catechism says the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person. As a Catholic, how do you advise the president on this issue of the death penalty?
Yeah, so the president has made very clear how he feels about the death penalty. I understand what that would be. Are you Catholic? Okay. Yes. I don't know why you're asking me a personal question.
Does your faith influence the way you advise the president?
Well, sure. And I'm glad he's the most pro-life president this nation's ever had. But on the issue of the death penalty, I've said, and I'll say it again, that the madman, racist, bigotous, domestic terrorist, monster who is motivated by evil in El Paso. I'm happy that he's being brought up on domestic terrorism charges and eligible for the death penalty. That to me seems like an appropriate punishment. I would imagine a lot of other people on the other side of the aisle don't think so. They somehow have all their ire trained on a president who's trying to heal a nation and actually take action for the first time in decades that will keep us all safer. And yet they don't train as much ire on the actual murderer. So that's, and I'll let you know if I ever run for public office, I'll answer your question. Quote, as a Catholic, I get a lot of questions from you all as a Catholic, as a mother. God forbid I ask you a similar question.
Why don't you share your views, how you advise the president?
You're not going to ask me a question about my faith here, and I'm not going to answer it.
Kellyanne, the president said that.
Andrew wouldn't like it.
The president said that there's a big appetite on Capitol Hill for doing something on background checks. What is he hearing from Republican leaders that lead him to believe that?
Sure. He's hearing from Republicans and Democrats. He's hearing from people in the states and here in Washington, even though they're not in Washington. They're off on some 6-week recess. Why, I don't know. But he's hearing from both sides of the aisle, both chambers, and from everyday people. Public sentiment is as important as political appetite in this regard, in that people have been saying after mass shooting, do something, do something, do something. And the reason they keep saying do something is because the people who work in this town don't do much of anything to assuage that and to mollify, and I think even to help eradicate, or I should say ameliorate or try to prevent the next mass shooting. So the president is the one 2 days ago in his address to the nation. He talked about the red flag laws. We already have 17 states in D.C. that have them in place. So there is a public appetite. They work in certain states. We know that Chairman Graham and Senator Blumenthal, in a bipartisan fashion, are looking at that or preparing that. The president is open to that. He has put his imprimatur on that possibility, depending on what it says in the end. He's talked to Senators Manchin and Toomey as well. So we'll see what the legislation says. We'll see if those who are supposed to be legislating actually come back to Washington to do that. That's up to them.
Are you getting any sense from Senator McConnell that he's willing to...
Senator McConnell put out a statement. And if you covered that statement, you should also cover people around his house threatening him. It's pretty rough stuff. People being threatened online, private citizens who are exercising their First Amendment right to free speech by donating to the candidate of their choice and then being doxxed by a member of Congress who is basically putting out a target list. So all of this needs to stop. My boss and our president is trying to turn down the temperature and do that, but he's not being met by the crazies on the other side, some of whom are doing it for political gain, since according to the Quinnipiac poll, it looks like 20 of them are under 1%, 4 are at 1%, and 2 are at 2%. So I don't know, old math, new math, that's 25 of them, 26 of them at or below the margin of error. They shouldn't be using any of this for political gain. They should be meeting with the president today and here in Washington starting tomorrow to find out how we can work together. Joe?
Is it possible to get a little bit more specific on this appetite for background checks? Is this an appetite for what they're talking about in the House bill, which is more wide-ranging, or is the appetite for red flags?
Well, the president's talked about red flags. He's talked to Manchin and Toomey. He's talked to Graham. I'm not sure he's talked to Blumenthal, but he's talking about the Graham-Blumenthal legislation, the red flags. And that's a big start. That's more than a big start. Frankly, when Joe Biden's out there screaming about what's not being done, he was vice president. So if it wasn't done when he was here. And he's also was elected to the Senate at the age of 29. So he's 76. It's a long time for people to now say to this president who's been here for 2.5 years, do something, do something. He's willing to do something, Joe. That's a big step forward.
Kellyanne, can I ask you more about health care? You say it's not a repeal and replace of Obamacare. I'm wondering if you can just describe more in length exactly what the president's plan is.
I can't right now, but I certainly have previewed it for the House members, the Republican House members. I'm going to preview it for the Senate Republicans. I'd be happy to preview it for the Democrats. Every time we try to book a room up on Capitol Hill, the room is taken down on the House side. We literally can't get a room. No room in the inn for the White House to give bipartisan briefings on issues that affect the world. A long time ago there was no room at the inn for a very special baby. That all worked out. So maybe we'll be able to get up there at some point in an alternative space and brief him as well. But the president will come out with his health care plan. And in the meantime, I see the Democrats are on defense about health care now. They're all attacking President Obama and Obamacare. That's really rich. So we don't need to bother to do that. We're going beyond a failed Obamacare.
What's the core of it? You mentioned
the
that
core is, you weren't here when I just said
I
we're
was
protecting
listening to it.
protecting pre-existing conditions, full stop. We're making sure that there's more freedom in the healthcare system so that people aren't stuck with the plans that just their employers choose for them and that the government says they have to have. We also are, the individual mandate penalty is gone. We had 3 million Americans paying $6 billion in penalties rather than go pay for this wonderful thing called Obamacare. They were willing to pay billions of dollars in penalties instead of that. But we need to put the patients back in charge of their health care. We also are looking at Medicaid, strengthening Medicaid and making sure that it's there for the people for whom it was intended. Since, as we know, look, Obamacare covers a very small percentage of the country. There's 330 million people in this country. About 315 million of them or so, probably higher, are not on Obamacare. So it shouldn't be that difficult to explain to the rest of the country why they can have better health care than what they already have. But we are not going to allow people to take away private insurance from 177 million Americans who are mostly happy with it. And Medicare for All, in addition to the monetary costs, which are explosive, would be the largest single entitlement ever, one-time entitlement ever. We don't have the money for that. That's not necessary. It wouldn't even provide better care. Apart from the monetary cost of Medicare for All, or the moral cost, it essentially would do to many Americans what the last administration did to those veterans who were dying waiting for care in Tucson and other places 5 years ago last month. It rations care in a way that we end up waiting for care. We're waiting to see the doctor. We don't want that. Lots of Americans are happy with what they have. So I need to go for the 11 o'clock. I'll be back out in 20 minutes.